Hey there, I'm Steve, and welcome to Gems and Entertainment. And welcome to the conversation. Just before we get started, there are many ways you can help. You can like and subscribe so you never miss a conversation. But most importantly, please share this video. Get the word out there as a community. We can talk about all things that we love. Today on Throwback Thursday, we're looking at Star Trek First Contact. In addition to the cast from the last movie, you also have Alfred Woodard, sorry for mispronouncing that, James Cromwell, Alice Krieg, sorry for mispronouncing that, Neil McDonough, Robert Picardo, and Dwight Schultz. Before I get to the plot, I'm going to expand upon something I talked about briefly in the last review. The biggest difference between the original series movies and the Next Generation movies, I don't know why, but the Next Generation movies are really made for the fans, and they're more episodic. Star Trek fans can watch any of the Next Generation movies more or less out of order and they'll be perfectly fine watching it. They won't miss any context. If you're not a fan, there's a whole bunch of context that you're going to be missing. From the Star Trek The Motion Picture review I did, this reintroduces the Borg. The motion picture was like the very beginning of the Borg, and they've come a very long way since then. They've assimilated thousands of worlds and have moved from the Delta Quadrant into the Alpha Quadrant. There's so much to talk about because there's so much context that's not there for non-fans. The Borg take up a large focus of the Next Generation TV series. They're there in the very first episode because of an entity named Q. That whole episode revolves around Q, who is an omnipotent entity, showing humanity just how ill-prepared they are to explore the rest of the galaxy. They also touch on the fact that Captain Picard was captured by the Borg. It's a two-part episode, technically three. The Best of Both Worlds Part 1 and 2, and the reason why I say technically three, the following episode, Family, is very crucial to that story. They don't touch upon the family part, they only touch upon the Best of Both Worlds in this. Picard has PTSDs for when he was assimilated by the Borg, and he still has a good amount of cybernetic implants in his brain. Most notably, an antenna that connects to the hive mind. The movie opens up with the Borg attacking the Alpha Quadrant, heading towards Earth. This isn't their first attempt, but it's a different strategy than the first time. And Starfleet Command doesn't trust Picard engaging with the Borg. The Enterprise is sent into the neutral zone to, just do busy work. There's some official reason why they're sent there, but it's just busy work, because Command is afraid of what will happen if Picard engaged the Borg. Things don't go too well for the fleet, and so the Enterprise has to involve themselves anyway. Among one of the ships in this attack is the Defiant, which if you didn't see Deep Space Nine, you wouldn't know what that is. And Worf is on that ship. Again, you gotta watch Deep Space Nine to know why he's on that ship. And the same problem I had with Generations I have with this one, but they dial it back a bit, and that's the jokes. It's not nearly as comedic as Generations. It's more one-liners, and they definitely dial back Data. He does play an integral part in the movie, but it's not nearly as big as his part in Generations. They mostly keep the focus on Picard, because this is largely his movie. This is him still confronting his experience with the Borg. The Borg lose this battle. I only put that in air quotes because they always have a backup plan. It goes from being a Borg cube, which the best way to describe those is like they're miniature Death Stars, only in like size comparison. They don't serve the same purpose. Borg cubes are very difficult to take down, and they are also self-repairing. They're a large extension of the Borg themselves. Borg are cybernetic creatures that started in the motion picture by Captain Decker and Ilya agreeing to become part of V'ger. I won't go into too much detail there because it's a lot to go into, but basically they're the first cybernetic Borg. And from there, they must have gone back to the Delta Quadrant, and because they want more information and become closer to perfection, they expanded out and started assimilating, conquering other worlds, and making new Borg out of the inhabitants of those worlds, leading to this moment. And the Borg's Plan B is an escape ship that's a sphere that creates its own time travel portal to Earth's past. The Enterprise follows them through and sees the Earth go backwards in time and the effects that the Borg could possibly have on humanity. One of the possibilities is the Earth being completely assimilated, but they follow all the way through to the past to a point just before first contact. So the point in time that they go back to is 2063. It's not too far off, it's 40 years, which is the blink of an eye for time. In the Star Trek universe, by this time, World War III has ended and humanity's been broken up into many factions. The point on Earth that this takes place in is Montana. And what's so significant about this point in time and this location, a famous figure named Zefram Cochrane is working on the very first warp drive. And that is the Borg's mission, to stop that. If humanity doesn't succeed in warp drive, they won't be contacted by the Vulcans. So the crew of the Enterprise have the counter mission of making sure that this launch is successful. But they have to do it as discreetly as possible, which they kind of fail at doing. They have to break the Prime Directive in order to achieve their mission. Prime Directive is something that they learned from the Vulcans, which is to not interfere with worlds that have inferior technology. The Prime Directive dictates to leave them alone and to let them develop on their own. And that once they break the warp barrier, then it's okay to make contact. With the character of Zefram Cochrane, we're also introduced to his lab partner, a woman that is helping him build this rocket for warp capability. Her name is Lily, and she plays the role of the audience more so than Zefram does, because she, in the scuffle, gets taken to the Enterprise for medical assistance, and then she wakes up and she separates herself from the crew, because while she's being treated, the Borg have beamed over to the Enterprise and started simulating the parts that they need to achieve their mission. While she's separated, she runs into Picard, and he takes it upon himself to bring her back to Earth. And through the relationship that they're building, she learns about his time with the Borg and why he hates them so much. His hate has blinded him so much that he's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure the Borg don't achieve their mission. He's making decisions that don't seem logical, which is kind of out of place for Picard, but because he feels so wronged by the Borg, he doesn't care, and he orders the crew to do things that he normally wouldn't order them to do, which is basically fight to the death to make sure the Borg don't achieve their mission. And again, there are conversations that make more sense if you've seen the series. Most notably between Worf and Picard. They have a huge history together. I mentioned briefly in the last review that Worf's story is his observation of humanity and him growing through that observation. But it's also the fact that he is torn between worlds. He sees himself as a true Klingon, other than the fact that he's a full-blood Klingon, but he also sees himself as part of humanity, only because of his past. He got separated from his family in an incident where he soon got adopted by a human family, and he was raised by them at a young age, probably 6 or 7. And I guess to honor his Earth family, he joined Starfleet. He's the first Klingon to do so. And since then, he's never been part of either world, even though he tries to be part of both. And there are episodes in The Next Generation going over exactly this, and Picard helps him through these situations. And even having a conversation between the two of them, Picard is still blinded by his hate for the Borg. And it's the character Lily that points out the fact that he's behaving an awful lot like Captain Ahab from Moby Dick. And that helps Picard come around to rational thinking. I will say that this is probably the best looking Star Trek movie, outside of Wrath of Khan and Undiscovered Country. Just on a special effects level, the Borg could never look so good. Of course, when you have a movie budget, you can achieve the looks that you want. That's exactly why the Klingons look the way they do in the motion picture versus the original series. And the fact that everything is largely practical is just a huge bonus, because what you see is right in front of the camera. That's mostly because of the times. This came out in 1996, so they had to work with 1995 technology. Nowadays, it's very possible that instead of having all the extras to play the Borg, well, they probably still have those extras, but they'd be wearing the suits that they wear to capture CGI motion for characters instead of having full-blown costumes. Nowadays, they might have a costume for I don't know, a couple of them, especially the Borg Queen. They'd probably have a costume for her, but even then, maybe not. The movie would not be as immersive and believable as it is if they used CGI like they do today, even though CGI has come a very long way. And outside the special effects, it is fun to watch the Next Generation crew interact with this timeline and to see their hero for who he really is. It's like the old saying goes, don't meet your heroes. I mean, me personally, I haven't had any bad encounters meeting any of the actors that I have. I'm sure it's true for some instances, but I just haven't had those experiences, thankfully. And it's also very satisfying to see Picard work through his issues with the Borg. Because even though the episode of Family, he learns not to be so hard on himself, it's here he learns to not let his hatred get in the way of the greater good. This movie is a great time, although if you haven't seen any of the series, you have to at minimum see the Borg episodes from Next Generation and watching the first season that Worf's in Deep Space Nine. So you don't have to watch them in their entirety. It kind of helps to watch a little bit of Voyager, but that's really only for Robert Picardo's part. He plays a holographic doctor that's introduced in Voyager. That's like the only part of Voyager you need. But I do recommend you watch those key parts because there's a whole lot of context you'll miss. You'll be like, what are they talking about? Star Trek movies as a whole, I recommend you do get the original series movies on Blu-ray, 4K if it's available, and that you get Generations and First Contact also on Blu-ray or 4K if it's available. I've seen the other movies after First Contact. Let's see, what are they called? I think it's Insurrection is the one after this, and then Nemesis. They're okay. I don't think I'm gonna spend time reviewing them. And then you have the reboots. The first one and the third one are good. Skip the second one. It's a horrible retelling of Wrath of Khan. Those are my thoughts on Star Trek First Contact. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and live your imagination.